If you like this channel and what I do here, please help to support my work by checking out one of my books, available from Lulu Publishing and Amazon.com. Thank you. Did you see that?
No, what?
Out the window there, look.
What?
There's a man on the wing of the plane! Hi folks, Carl James here from Electric Media Madness, joined by Dan Ryan. How you doing, mate?
I'm good.
Yeah, we've had a great time, haven't we?
We have.
Yeah. We've watched The Twilight Zone, the classic, the original. None of these remakes and reboots and blah blah blah, especially the woke shit that is the most recent one. The classic 1959, 5 seasons, absolutely fantastic series. We've watched 5 episodes. Amongst many other great episodes, but these were just like, it's kind of just picked at random. It was your idea that we were going to do that. I mean, I love the Twilight Zone, but you were the one that said, what about the Twilight Zone?
And I am so glad I did.
Yeah.
Absolute blast watching these last night.
Yeah. The episodes, the 5 episodes, we're going to talk about them in no particular, well, it was the order that we picked them in, but it was actually when we realised that it was like season 3, season 5, season 2, season 3, season 1, these episodes. But we're going to start with a classic episode from season 3 of The Twilight Zone called To Serve Man.
Aliens arrive at Earth, and they come into the UN and everything, and they're like, we are here to serve you. And all this stuff, they're like, we'll help you grow food, we'll help you shields to protect your country so you can get rid of war, things like that. And then they leave this book behind that's in their made-up language that looks like whatever, And that's given to the code breakers and that.
Yeah. But
they can't make sense of it or anything. And while that's going on, everything is becoming better on Earth, barren wasteland, the deserts in Australia or whatever, are full of grass,
like a Garden of Eden. All of a sudden, and
then they managed to translate the title, and it is.
They keep saying that the Canamites, aren't they? They're called. Yeah, and they do keep saying that we're here to serve you.
Yeah, we're here to serve you. Yeah. And they translate that, and as soon as they translate the title, they're like, "That's it. They're here to help us. They have no ill threat at all." And then. It time skips a bit, and the main head of the coding people, he's given up completely, and is she an assistant?
I think she's his sister. Yeah. She clearly has got some sort of skill because she cracked the title.
Or just one of the people that works there anyway. She's like, I'll carry on translating it, and they're all going off. To the alien planet, everyone wants to go there.
Yeah, they're all starting to visit, aren't they? And he's going, isn't he?
He's going. He's in the queue to go.
Yeah.
And he's climbing the stairs. Suddenly, she calls him out, and she says, "It's a cookbook."
I mean, it's just a fantastic tiny little thing.
Yeah, it is genius.
Yeah. I don't know. I think. Because I've seen it so many times, it doesn't really have any impact on me now. I think it's one of those things that, for you, that's the first time you'd seen that.
It's the first time I've seen all of these.
Yeah. So it's a great idea.
Yeah.
And there's a nice little framing as well, because the episode actually starts with you seeing him, it's like a flashback.
Yeah,
you see him on the ship telling the story of how they came and all that. And I think one of the things that we also wanted to make a point of talking about in this video was this idea how these are truly groundbreaking. They really did change the genre in so many ways. They reshaped how science fiction, not so much in literature, because a lot of these things had already been done in literature, like Astounding Stories and all the pulps, the science fiction magazines of the 30s and the 40s and the 50s and all that kind of thing. But certainly where television was concerned, these were groundbreaking. Yeah. I think there'd been science fiction theatre in the mid 50s, but nothing was on this level of storytelling, and I couldn't help but think how To Serve Man has influenced so many. Principally, one of the main examples that sticks out in my head is V from the 1980s. They come to Earth, they want to be our friends, they want to help them, we'll create all these new chemicals and shield technology and all that. And then it turns out that they want the human race for food.
Yeah.
They want some humans for slaves, for warriors and that, and they want to pinch all the water and all that. But yeah, they want all that, you see them eating gerbils and birds and things like that, but they eat humans as well. So yeah, I mean, V probably wouldn't have been around had it not been for that idea of to serve man.
It's done in a really discreet way. So it's like you think, oh, they're helping them. They're ending war. They're ending, starvation and everything. That's all fine. What they're actually doing is they're allowing them to grow more food to fatten them.
Fatten them up, yeah.
And they're stopping the war, so more people are alive to eat.
Yeah, which is really, yeah. And you don't. It's only when you analyse it back afterwards that you think, yeah, that's what they're actually doing. Yeah. One other little thing I wanted to point out with it, it's just one of these trivia things, probably very, very well known to the fans of the Twilight Zone, is that the main Canamit was played by actor Richard Keel. For some people, he was Jaws in the James Bond films with the metal teeth.
Oh.
It's the same actor.
I thought he looked familiar.
Yeah. One of those sort of stock actors that are very, very tall that they used a lot. But yeah, it's a nice little touch that. There's not really a lot. I mean,
one other thing I jotted down is it's somewhat a social commentary on how people will just if something appears like a nice gesture, they're just selfish and they'll accept it and they won't question anything.
And I think there's a line in the episode where something to the effect of what's that phrase that you hear said quite a lot? It's a bit of a cliched one about about it, something that looks too good to be true that it's usually not.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that was in this episode where it was said. It might even have been either one of the UN delegates or one of the code breakers, but it's like it's too good to be true sort of thing. And society, that is something that very much runs as a theme through a lot of these episodes.
Yeah, a lot of it is sort of people being selfish and
social commentary.
Yeah,
and that's something that Rod Serling, who was basically the showrunner for certainly the early years of the time, he kind of stepped back a bit from season 3 onwards, but 90 odd episodes out of all of them were his screenplays or stories. He oversaw, and they had some great writers on it as well. Richard Matheson and Ray Bradbury, I think, was another one. And but principally, he was the one that was sort of overseeing it, which I like that. I like that. That's that kind of, we talked about like J. Michael Straczynski with Babylon 5. To have somebody to have a vision for a series,
it generally turns out better.
Yeah, and you see that through these episodes. They're very much like what we like about Star Trek as well. The idea of the morality tales, telling little stories that. Because one of the things that principally, I just want to read something from my book actually, if I can find it. It's we talked about the idea. I mean, this is it's not. You know what? I'll do. Shameless plug: science fiction and the hidden global agenda. Please buy it if you're interested. About 600 odd pages of fascinating connections between the science fiction genre and sort of alternative knowledge research that I look into. But there is quite a section in here on the Twilight Zone, and it's this quote that Rod Serling really wanted to say things that I mean, you've got to think about this. This was the time of like McCarthyism, the Hays Code, the Red Scare, communism everywhere, all this kind of thing and that. So if you were critical of anything in society, you were automatically they witch hunted you. You basically, you were on the blacklist. And I do actually believe that there are documents, FBI documents, CIA documents. On Rod Serling, they did keep an eye on him because he was challenged the system quite a bit in terms of the questions that he asked, but he never actually outright said them. It was always in the form of these morality tales. And he did say once, quote directly from him, "I don't want to have to push for something that I want and settle for second best. I don't want to have to compromise all the time, which is in essence, is what a television writer does if he wants to put on controversial themes. So rather than saying them outright, which is something that Star Trek did as well, you'd sort of couch it in these little space aliens, spaceships, monsters, all that kind of thing. You'd be telling us, you were talking about real things. But yeah, anything else you wanted to say about Discernment?
The only other thing I've got jotted down is I wished it was longer.
Yeah, that is the problem with a lot of these episodes.
But it did still tell it extremely well in the 25 minutes.
But what's interesting you saying about that, season 4 went over to 50-minute episodes.
Right.
And it suffered for it.
Oh, did it?
They were too long. The episodes were too long. There are some great stories in season 4, but I think the quality dropped because there was a lot of padding in some of the episodes.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
And then for season 5, they went back to the 25-minute format again.
I think some of these, actually, wouldn't have been as good if they were. Like, probably, the last one. Yeah. And probably Nightmare at 20,000 feet. Probably.
Which is a good segue into the next episode we're going to talk about, Nightmare at 20,000 feet, from season 5. I think it's the second appearance from William Shatner in the series, previously in Nick of Time episode, which is fondly remembered because it's got that bobble-headed demon napkin dispensing fortune teller that they want this table in the diner, and it's predicted the future, and it's like, oh, is there something bad's going to happen today? And they put the coin in, and this little piece of paper comes out, and it says, "It is possible." It's very vague. That's another great episode if you want to watch that at some point. But William Shatner is brilliant in this episode.
He is amazing in this.
I mean, they talk about hammy acting with William Shatner. A lot of do this, it's like the way he's like chewing on the scenery sort of thing. But this shows that he can do it. He's Judgment at Nuremberg, Trial at Nuremberg. I can't remember which one he was in before that. I mean, that he was fantastic in that. So he can do it. He definitely can do it. Really tautly directed. The suspense. It was a really close set as well, because it's interesting is this episode was directed by Richard Donner, who went on to like Superman, Lethal Weapon films, Goonies, loads and loads of films. A fantastic director, and I think he was only 32, 33, something like that when he directed this episode. But this really claustrophobic set. It was on it was a plane that was built in like a water tank soundstage type thing, or something to that effect. And the wings were outside, and there was no pull-away walls either in the plane, so they had to take these massive cameras as they were back into the aisles. So very limited angles, but some real taut, and like the expression on Shatner's face when he pulls back the curtain and the. Well, I mean, that's. I mean, we haven't. Again, for people who haven't seen it, go on. Give us a synopsis.
So William Shatner's character, he had a nervous breakdown on a flight before, so he'd been having therapy or institutionalised or whatever. Was it?
Yeah, I think it was a sanitarium, was it, or something like that? He'd been in.
Yeah.
It was effect to that effect.
Something like that. Yeah. And he, the doctor said he's perfectly fine now. He's all clear. So he goes on a plane to go home, which is why he's so nervous throughout the start of it. And then the plane takes off and everything's fine. He looks out the window. And there's a man-like figure out there.
Which he calls a gremlin.
Which
incidentally, I believe was partly the inspiration for the Gremlins films. Although there were stories... how true, I don't know, but it's one of these urban myths, about gremlins in the works and planes during the Second World War and stuff like that. But anyway, that.
But and then it's slowly pulling away at the plane,
ripping the wing,
ripping the engine open, basically. And but every time he calls anyone over to look, they don't see anything because it's moved out the way. Mm-hmm. And it goes on like that for a little bit, and he tries to get other people, and they're all just thinking he's insane. Like,
but you would though, wouldn't you? If you was on a plane and then somebody, I mean, nowadays if somebody said there's a man on the plane, you'd think, the Twilight Zone. But back then,
But he says to his wife, he's like, talk to the pilot. I will like you know, I'll hand myself in as I'm insane and everything if they find nothing there. She won't believe him. No
do they play along with him, the pilot?
They humour him.
Yeah. Now, what I thought would have been really clever about that episode was if you didn't hear what they were saying to his wife, and then you found out later on that they did know it was on the wing of the plane.
Yeah.
But they were just trying to keep the passengers calm by saying, "Oh no, it's all right, it's nothing," you know. But they really, I mean, that could be the case. They might have, but I mean, yeah. Anyway, sorry.
But you're kind of left like, for a while, you're like, is he seeing things? Is this actually on the plane?
Is it in his mind or is it real?
Yeah. But then the very last shot, you see like the engine ripped open.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, okay.
So, but they do go through a storm. And could it have been struck by lightning and burnt it and scorched it and ripped it back?
It could.
And it could have still been in his mind. That is the beauty of these episodes. It's very much open to interpretation. You go away from it with the assumption that it really was there on the wing of the plane and he really did see it. But that's what I love about this episode. It's so, you know, the mind of man. You know, things can play tricks on you, you know.
Yeah. Shatner really carries this so hard.
Yeah.
But I think, because I didn't notice the way it was filmed when I first watched it, really. But since you said, it really benefits from, like...
that really compact set. And
like, they can only film certain directions, and it feels like you're on a small plane. Because
the actual set was there, and the wings were outside the actual windows, and they shot it like... So they had to sort of like, part of it they shot from the outside, and they did actually shoot it through the window out on from that set, through the window out. And what I love is, they say about it, that shot when he pulls back the curtain and you see, and the water, and it kind of distorts the gremlin's face, so it looks even more. Yeah. Because that costume, if you see it, it looks like, I don't know, it just looks like a... What are they all-in-one thing called?
Well, onesie.
Onesies, with like a mask in it, something like that. But it still looks great. It looks fantastic. And the way it all distorts his face when he's looking at him through and he's going like this, twitching from side to side. And then Shatner's reaction as well is like... And the bit where it pulls him out the window, you know, when he's... You know, that look on it, and you know, when he's shooting it, and he's like that, and then it cuts to him like lying on the gurney when they're taking him away to the nuts house, aren't they, at the end? Because, it's alright, you know, you're okay, there's nothing to see, you know. And he says that, doesn't he? He says, well, I can't remember exactly what the line is, but, you know, he says, I know that it was, you know, and one day people will realise, you know, what's going on, that these things are real, sort of thing, you know. And incidentally, I mean, it's just another one of those little interesting stories, which I did tell you about just prior to recording this, is that in the film version, John Lithgow, because the story's redone in the film, and John Lithgow plays basically the same character that William Shatner. And then in Third Rock from the Sun, which is a series I absolutely love, John Lithgow's playing like Dick Solomon in it, and William Shatner plays the big giant head. And when they meet, he comes off the plane and he's like, how was your flight? And all that big giant overlord sort of thing, that kind of thing. And he's like, yeah, he says, but there's a really interesting thing. He says, I looked out the window and there was a man on the wing. And John Lithgow goes, that happened to me too. It's like, such a brilliant in-joke. It's really like, you know. But it's one of those things that's now in like the cultural lexicon. You know, this idea. I've got to believe that there's people who've done that. And another interesting thing as well was that when Richard Donner, I can't remember who it was. I think it was somebody who was working on the production of the episode, and they got this trying to sort of set this whole thing up of this idea of the gremlin on the wing and that. And then Richard Donner contacted an airline, this person who's working, he'd arranged for, I want to say it was Richard Matheson, but I can't remember for definite whether it was... Anyway, they were going to go on a flight, and he'd arranged with the plane company to have a poster of the gremlin stuck on the window outside the plane, so that when he'd shut the curtain, so that as he was going to take off, and he'd say to him, oh, just open that curtain, and then he'd see the gremlin. But the trouble, he went to so much effort to get this organised, and then as the plane took off, the wind blew the poster off the window, so he went to open the curtain, and he went, yeah, and there was nothing there. Which I thought was just a fantastic story. All this rigmarole he went through just to arrange that to happen. But, you know, you can say so much about this episode. It really is. It's a classic. It really is an absolute classic. I think it's between 2.5, 3 days tops to film as well. You know, I mean, the turnaround on these episodes was very fast with, you know, certainly in those days.
There's a lot of tension in it. Like, that you would... It doesn't sound like there would be.
No.
But, like, there really is.
Our third episode is an episode from Season 2 called The Obsolete Man. This is my favourite Twilight Zone episode. I absolutely love this episode.
See why.
I love this episode.
It's fantastic.
As an alternative knowledge researcher, it's the fire that gets lit underneath me sometimes that makes me want to put information out there to get people to see the world for the way it really is. There's so many fantastic quotes right from the get-go. I mean, the story with this basically is you've got two fantastic actors, favourite actors of the period for me, Burgess Meredith and Fritz Weaver, and it's a dictatorial 1984 type state. Yeah. And Burgess Meredith plays this a librarian called Romney Wordsworth, I think his name is, and the state declares him obsolete. They don't need books anymore, so because he's a librarian, because he books and all that kind of thing, he's obsolete. Yeah. So they tell him that he's going to be put to death. And they ask him, you know, the state is Fritz Weaver is fantastic. The state is benevolent. We will allow you to choose how you wish to die, and it'll be televised for the masses to see, so it can reaffirm their belief in the system and all this kind of thing. So he's very wily, the Romney Wordsworth, and he decides that he wants to have it televised in his room, in his apartment, sort of thing.
But he wants only him and the assassin to know
death
how.
by a bomb explosion.
Yeah.
But he says to him, only the assassin will know how.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, yeah. So he invites the Chancellor, it seems like it's an invite, to come to his room. About 40 minutes, is it, before?
It's
going to die. And he locks him in there. And and the Chancellor is like waxing lyrical about how you're. I'm trying to think of some quotes from it, but
just like, you're obsolete. The state is great. And all this
you're an animal and you're a nothing and you're you know, all this kind of thing. The state is great and all this kind of thing.
One thing I did jot down, which this isn't word for word what he said, but he said something along the lines of Hitler and Stalin are great.
Yeah.
And they just didn't go far enough.
Far enough, and we've gone that much further. So this is a proper dictatorship. This is a proper fascist...
I found the world building in this episode is amazing. Like, you know instantly how this world works, and it's built
within minutes. It's there. Yeah. This is the world. This is a nightmare. This is an absolute nightmare of a world to be living in. And one of the things that I'm drawn to watching dystopian science fiction, because it's that old saying of "there but for the grace of God go I" sort of thing, and this idea that you need to be mindful of these things happening in the world, because tyranny, dictatorships, they can appear just like that.
Yeah.
And before you realise it, you've lost all your freedoms, and it's too late. All the moaning that you do then, you're not going to get anything back from before, which is very much what is going on now in the world. Absolutely is what's going on in the world. You know, people really, really have to be careful to just let these kind of states exist and all that kind of thing. But Romney Wordsworth basically he sits there, and this part of the episode, not being a religious person, I didn't really appreciate this part of it, because he's sitting there reading from the Bible, which is one of the obsolete books. If that's what floats your boat, that's fine. You know, it doesn't do anything for me, but that's something that he takes comfort from reading to him, doesn't he? And
he says because it's punishable by death. That's his most treasured possession. It's the only thing that's worth anything.
Then to him, absolutely, This trite sort of almost decadent society, you know, in terms of, but total lockdown control, you know, fist and fear kind of thing, state. And he's just talking and just quoting from it and reading from it, and the time goes by, and the tension is really powerful, isn't it? Really palpable. And then all of a sudden, you can see the sweat starting to appear on his forehead, the Chancellor, and that. And he just cracks, doesn't he?
Breaks completely.
He just cracks. And he's... I'm trying to remember how basic... Because he just
starts like
get me out
on the
of
door.
here, get me out of here. Yeah.
And then,
for God's sake!
No, in the name of God.
In the name of God,
he's like,
yeah.
in the name of God, let me out!
Something that they should not be believing in this.
And then he's like, okay. And he unlocks the door and lets him go.
Out. Yeah. And then the bomb goes off.
Yeah.
And he dies. And then the final scene, the Chancellor is brought before the council. He's obsolete now. And they say, you're a coward. Yeah. That's why you're obsolete. Interesting that they didn't mention about the fact that because he'd used that word, God, that Wordsworth had...
Well, I'm guessing he was a coward because he called on God, which they claim to have proven doesn't exist.
But they say that, we've proven that it doesn't exist, yeah. Anything any kind of belief system other than belief in the state. Yeah. And belief in what we tell you is real. That's it. As long as you believe in that, you'll be fine. You won't be obsolete. But above and beyond that, yes.
Very specifically, we're trying to get rid of history.
Yes.
There's a few cases of that happening.
The total destruction of history.
Yeah.
So no, certainly I'm there's certain characters, certain events, certain things that I remembered that I don't think we should be celebrating, or absolutely should not be celebrating. But again, it's there, but for the grace of God go I, because that idea, the person that ignores history is doomed to repeat it.
Yeah, you can't learn from your mistakes. If you forget your mistakes.
History has to exist in order for us to learn from. And this is a classic example with this episode as well. It's showing you this is what could happen. So learn from this. Watching this. Reading like George Orwell's 1984 and all these kind of things, learn from it so that you can recognise when things get too bad, really bad. Yeah. I mean, there are a couple of really great quotes that I wanted to Rod Serling's intro to the episode. Logic is an enemy and truth. Logic is an enemy and truth is a menace. I mean, we're living in that world now. Truth is inconvenient. They don't want people to be logical. Logic is an enemy. If you think logically, if you've got critical thinking, then you're an enemy to the state. We've got that going on in the world now. Truth is conveniently ignored now because it's too inconvenient. It's politically inconvenient, socially inconvenient. And there's this line from Wordsworth. He says, "If I speak one word aloud, it exists." And that is a fantastic little line. That reminds me of the intersections in real time, the torture of Sheridan in Babylon 5, which is very much like this in some respects. And the Inquisitor, the torturer chap, whose name escapes me, he's like trying to break him, and they drug him, and they poison him and make him sick, and they like audio messages torturing him all night long, and all this kind of stuff, and that really put him through the ringer. And he says to him towards the end of the episode, he says, we'll tell you what time of day it is. Is it day? Is it night? Is it you'll believe this and that? And do you honestly believe? I mean, I'm paraphrasing him. Do you honestly believe that you can fight this? We can try you. Could you honestly believe that you can do this? And Sheridan turns around and goes, "Every time I say no." And that to me is a mantra in life. You see, when you recognise these horrible state of affairs happening, dictatorships appearing, fascist states appearing around you slowly but surely, you have to stop and say no. Yeah. Sometimes you have to say no. You're taking my freedom and my rights away from me, my inalienable human rights away from me.
Well, the old man in this episode, what is it?
Wordsworth.
Wordsworth.
Rodney Wordsworth.
He's just like, I am a librarian.
Yeah.
It's like that is my profession. Yeah. That is what I do. That is my passion.
Information is freedom. Knowledge is power, and that's what books are. And there's some shit books, but there's some fantastic books. That is how you learn. And Serling's final words, the narration over the end is so profound. Any state, any entity, any ideology that fails to recognise the worth, the dignity, the rights of man, that state is obsolete. But we'll take a little breather from that, because this is quite heady, profound stuff, this is. But it's a fantastic subject and it needs to be talked about, especially now. But we'll take a little break for a minute. We're going to do a strange little episode. We're going to talk about the fourth one now. Season 3, The Midnight Sun. Seeing as we're talking about alternative knowledge type stuff, interesting that there seems to be a few little foreshadowings of 9/11 in this episode as well, which a few people have pointed out. But we'll leave that more in the conspiratory territory. But
there's a woman who lives with her landlady, and right at the start of the episode, basically everyone else who lives in the building is leaving, and it's really hot, and you find out that the Earth's gone out of orbit, and it's heading towards the sun. So it's getting like 10 degrees hotter every day, and then they're slowly getting restricted on electricity. They're getting less water. Like, gets to a point where they're only getting like an hour's worth of water every day, and like there's no police in the cities or anything, and people are just doing
just
whatever.
Free for all.
Yeah. It's quite a, for a lot of the episodes, it's quite a quiet episode where it's just her and her landlady. Just sort of.
But I do like that about that episode. Yeah. It's like it's goodwill building, but you're getting it told through the lens of this room and a staircase.
Yeah,
and that's really it.
It shows the importance of other people.
Yes,
and like the importance of just simple, kind acts. Like,
which interestingly, again, ties into a lot of the things that this idea of isolating people. Locking people in their homes and things like that, and saying lockdown, to be safe and all this kind of thing. Because they say this in this episode. There's people looting, there's people running through this, rioting, blah blah blah, and all this kind of thing that are left in the city. Lock your doors, don't go out, don't let anybody in. Which leads to the next part of the story when we have this banging on the door in there.
Yeah, because someone breaks in,
and they think but it turns out he's just like them.
Yeah, he just needed some water.
Yeah, and. He lost his wife and his baby that was just born
I think his baby lasted like an hour.
Yeah.
And his wife lasted an hour longer than that, or something like that.
And that hits home, that idea of people needing people.
Mm.
You can't just lock people away from each other. I mean, we're on a theme today, aren't we, with this one? But it's true. It's all of these episodes. There's thematically, they're all. It is that the importance of people needing people. You can't just,
And that's. One of the bigger themes of this episode is just that her simple acts of kindness towards the landlady that keep her alive, basically.
Yeah.
Like, there's certain points where she'd have probably just passed out and died.
Yeah.
But she just gave her a glass of water or whatever. And
she does actually...
She does die.
She does die, doesn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll come to the end.
Well, yeah, we're basically... Well, there's other simple acts of kindness, like, she keeps drawing, like, the sun and stuff. And the landlady just says, paint something cool tomorrow.
Yeah.
And she does a waterfall for her.
Yeah.
And then the landlady goes insane and dies.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. I'm assuming it's like heat stroke and a heart attack or something like that. But you're right. I mean, she tried to give some of her water to the little girl that lives in the neighbouring.
Yeah, right at the start. They're like, she's like, "Oh, I've got enough," and the man says, "No, no one has enough." She's got
this bottle. That's it. That's all she's got in the fridge, in the freezer, or whatever it is. Yeah. Absolutely right. This idea of people can get through a lot more when they work together, when they stick together, a community. Funnily enough, the one who's giving the most acts of kindness, the main character, she says to the old woman, "Don't unlock the door," because they think he's gone. But she does. And then when he comes in, because she's got the gun pointing at him, he grabs the bottle of water and he drinks the water and he pours some over his head and then he smashes the bottle like that. And then he just loses it.
He's just like, "Please forgive me."
Please forgive me, yeah.
And she does forgive him.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, thank you."
Because she didn't have to. She could have just shot him. Said, "You drank my fucking water." Bang. But she doesn't. No.
I mean, you get a very interesting twist at the end.
Yeah.
So,
it just gets hotter and hotter.
She
and the
dies.
paint's melting down.
Everything melts and she basically looks like she dies. But then suddenly, it shows something different.
She's coming round.
And she's coming round. And she's having a really bad fever. And
I've got a temperature.
And has a really bad temperature.
So hot, yeah.
But what's actually happening is the Earth spun out of orbit and it's going away from the sun.
Yeah.
And every day it's getting like 10 degrees colder.
There's no sunlight. No. It's freezing. Everything's... Yeah.
Everyone's trying to run to like the hottest places.
Yeah, and they say like in 3 weeks there'll be no daylight and it'll be freezing and everyone will start dying. And so it's the complete opposite.
And then she says a line along the lines of like, isn't darkness good? We need some darkness.
Yeah, yeah. And the cold and it's so wonderful to feel cold and all this kind of... Because of what that fever dream that she's had. And the old woman is sitting there going, yeah. She's seen it from the opposite side.
Yeah.
God, wouldn't you just love it to be warm? You know, like It's a fantastic little episode. Very straightforward, but
that like, you know, where the paint's dripping and the credit and the music's playing and the credits are all
brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah.
So stylish. I mean, that's how you do it. That's how you make it.
Yeah.
You know, that's how you make science fiction and fantasy shows and anthology series and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. I mean, again, we're talking about how profound and influential these shows are. I very much think that this was set up things like, you know, When Worlds Collide, The Day the Earth Caught Fire, even things like The Day After Tomorrow in 2012, and all these kind of end of the world doom. You know, even like Melancholia and all that. You know, with these sort of end of life civilization type things, whether it be ecological or disaster from space and all that kind of thing. I'm sure it was done. I know it was done in literary science fiction before this, and it probably was done. But this is one that again really sticks out to me as a kind of a classic example of something, but with a twist, because it's a fever dream. Yeah. But there is still a disaster in it at the end, albeit a reversal. Yeah. Yeah, dramatic reversal. Great episode. Yeah.
I thought it wasn't quite as good as the other four.
No, it isn't. But it's like
it's still a very good episode.
Yeah. Going to our final episode, which is a season 1 episode. Yeah. Might be considered a cliche by some people to pick this one because this is the one that always gets picked. But the monsters are due on Maple Street.
So at the start, everyone's it's a happy neighbourhood. Everyone knows each other, sort of thing, and they're all outside. And then suddenly, there's a UFO noise that for some reason they think sounds like a meteor.
It's slow meteor.
It's a very unusual sounding meteor. So they're all just sort of think, okay, it's a meteor, nothing of it, and all the power goes out and everything. So they're all like, oh, okay, what's going on? Then someone goes off to see the next street to see if their power's on, and then they're talking a little bit, and then two of them are going to go to the town and see what's going on, and a kid stops them and says, you know,
doesn't the one chap go? The one who's got the hammer and...
No, he's the one who goes to the next street that I said before.
Sorry, I was getting mixed up.
Yeah. And then the kid, he...
is it Tommy or something like that his name is? Or something to that extent?
Something like that, yeah. He, you know, he likes his comic books.
Yeah.
And he said, if you go, you might not make it out, sort of thing. Like, the only people who can get out are, like, the mother and father and the 2 children that are aliens.
Yeah. He calls them infiltrators.
Infiltrators,
before the landings. Yeah. You know, they infiltrate before the landings. You know,
And they all immediately become suspicious of each other. And they're trying their cars and everything. Nothing will work. Like, they have no power whatsoever. And then suddenly, after one person tries to start his car, and it doesn't. He walks away and it starts. So everyone's...
It's weird, isn't it? Because it's intermittent, then it stops and then it starts again, and
they're like, it's him.
Yeah,
it must be him.
He's the infiltrator. He's the infiltrator.
Yeah. So they and there's things about it like they're like, he looks at the stars at night.
Yeah,
he must be.
He stands on the porch and looks at the sky.
And it turns out
he must be one of them.
He's just got insomnia, and he just wants to look at.
Yeah, can't sleep, so he just stands and looks at the stars.
And then like they're all really suspicious of him. But they're slowly getting a bit more suspicious of each other.
It's like a mob mentality, isn't it?
Yeah.
Starting at that point, yeah.
And then bloke comes back.
Yeah, they see somebody walking in the shadows towards them.
They see someone,
and they can see something hanging from his belt.
Yeah.
Which was the chap who went before with his hammer, but they think it's a gun.
Yeah. So they get the shotgun and shoot him.
Dead.
And kill him.
Yeah. Because they think he's like an alien or something,
and then they think the person who shot him is the alien.
Yeah.
And then
it just goes round and round.
And then lights start coming on in people's houses, and they're like, "He's the infiltrator. He's the infiltrator." And they basically just all kill each other.
Yeah, it's just total mob, and you see the chaos. At the end,
and then it moves away, and you see 2 aliens sat on a hill. that are just playing with the lights and the electric.
Yeah.
And they're just like, I think you wrote the quote down.
Yeah, I will read all of that out.
They're effectively, they're just like, this is the program. They'll destroy each other.
Yeah, leave it. All we have to do is just set the works up, set the scenario, set the plan in place, and then they'll do everything for us. You know, they'll destroy themselves. We won't have to do anything, and that is such a profound. It goes back to stuff that we've been talking about in this video.
Yeah,
it's now. That for me is now.
Like more so at the start when. The toilet paper crisis. Things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Because I've always asked that question: who started that? Who brought the first? Who emptied out the first shop of the toilet paper and the paracetamol, and then it became bread and milk, and then all of a sudden all the shops were like
half empty,
half empty, and 2 items only. This is in the UK. I can't speak for other countries, but certainly in the UK, and that is the Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, isn't it? And that was initial little thing we were told in the media.
It was just stuff like, and then newspapers on Facebook.
Everyone was going crazy.
Yeah,
everyone was buying. People were just carrying
like 20 packets of toilet
and handfuls of paracetamol and that. And if you had a headache, you got no chance if you wanted to get any. If you wanted to wipe your arse, you couldn't. It's like, well,
I know someone.
We're using newspaper again.
See, I know someone who was away just before lockdown started, and then they came back because they'd been away for like a month or something. They came back home, couldn't get any toilet paper for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And the results of other measures.
Yeah, we're not going to get into that graphic detail, but yeah, absolutely. And that is what we said. Yeah. Who started that?
Yeah.
Who did? Was it just one person? Yeah. I don't buy that because it's a combination of the media.
It's probably the Sun.
I don't have much good to say about any newspapers, or any media for that matter. I think it's a combination of the press, the media, social media on the internet as well. It was mob mentality. It was something that completely snowballed out of control.
Which is what happens here.
And the official narrative of the beer book was exactly the same. Everybody's going to lose somebody. Everyone's like, we're all going to die. We're all going to die. Yeah. You nowadays, I mean, this isn't just speculation. This is observation from our perspective in terms of what we've witnessed ourselves. But there's also hard, solid evidence out there proving that the numbers. I'm not going to get into too much more than that. But this goes to show that the people it's ordinary people that have led this, like lambs to the slaughter. Giving away our freedoms.
In this story.
Left, right, and centre, giving away our freedoms. And I'm not going to mention certain groups because that will instantly get our video removed or whatever. But the isms and the ists thing that's going, identity politics, that is following exactly the same pattern as the Monsters Are Due on Maple Street. And people have held up the Monsters Are Due on Maple Street as an example of what happens when people are racist and xenophobic and suspicious of other people, and how we need to remove that from society. Absolutely true. I do agree with that. But this also is an example of the opposite side of the argument at the moment.
Because if you're scared of everyone being a racist, then you're just going to destroy each other. Yeah. Even if everyone isn't a racist. Yeah.
And you inherently take on those traits yourself. It's like the whole saying, people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones.
Yeah.
It's like that. Yeah. So I mean, some great, again, some little quotes from it. Let's not be a mob. One person says very early in the episode, let's not be a mob.
That soon changes.
Clearly pointing out, let's not be a mob. There is some sanity there initially.
Yeah, he's kind of like,
last very long.
You see where this is going. Maybe we shouldn't do this.
Yeah, and that chap with the car, he says, "Does it make me a criminal because my car starts?" yeah. I mean, it's just, you couldn't write it, but somebody clearly did. Like you said, he suffers from insomnia, and his neighbours start backing away from him because he stands on the porch and looks at this, and he says to them, he says, "You're scared, frightened rabbits. You're letting something begin here that's a nightmare."
Yeah.
And that is so profound.
And very true.
And very prescient, very true of the state of the world. And then the wife says, this is some kind of madness. Yeah. It is like insanity, isn't it? Well, it's absolute insanity, madness.
They act like a herd.
Yeah.
They just... And this is reflective of a lot
of
people.
Sheep, just this
is reflective of a lot of people in the real world, that they just don't question anything, and they do as
they just told and follow the crowd. Yeah, absolutely.
It's like if you stood in the street, just staring up at someone.
I've done this.
Have you?
I have, because I'm fascinated in human psychology, and some people might say you're sick in the head. But I have actually done that to see if it happens. You stand there and look at the sky, and you watch how many people start looking at the sky.
Yeah.
And they think they're seeing things.
Yeah.
There's nothing there. And you know that there's nothing there.
Yeah.
You're not even looking at the sky to look for something. You've looked at the sky to see whether other people will do the same.
Yeah.
It's like if you talk to people and you start going like that. If you just keep going like that, eventually they'll start doing it.
Yeah.
They'll start copying you. They start rubbing their nose. They don't even know why. It just shows how easily human psychology can be manipulated.
Even onto a more basic level as well. Like, say if there was a TV show you really liked. If I said to you, Star Trek is going out of print, you'd buy it all probably. Or whatever you did.
Old stuff.
Old stuff. Yeah. If I said,
maybe.
If you didn't own the original series, and I said the original series is going out of print, everyone would buy it.
Yeah.
Even if I'm not telling the truth, even if I'm lying, everyone would buy it anyway.
But I would check first.
Yeah, but a lot of people
don't.
A lot of people wouldn't.
I would find out if that was true first.
Yeah.
And if there was a possibility of it being true, because I've been burnt on this before, where there's some things that I would love to have in my collection and I don't have.
Yeah.
Can't get them now because I missed the boat. I thought, nah, that won't go.
Yeah.
And it has gone.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm probably a bit more inclined to do that.
Yeah.
But I don't carry that mentality with things on practical day-to-day things in life, because I am very much a person who questions things all the time.
But on a very base level, this applies for a lot of things.
Yeah.
And at some point in their life, everyone will have been guilty too. I've been guilty of doing this myself before.
We all have.
Yeah.
We all have. And I think when you go through that transition, as I have in my life, and I know quite a few other people have done that as well, it doesn't make you perfect. It doesn't mean you still are compliant to the system to some degree, but far less. And you look back on your life, in my case, 10 or more years ago, certainly since I've gone off in a very different direction. And I find it almost impossible to imagine how I lived my life like that before.
I think
very naively and very close-mindedly in certain respects. Not in others, but...
You picked a very good set of episodes, because between these whole set of episodes...
And that wasn't intentional.
It basically analyses the entire human psyche.
Yeah. To be perfectly honest with you, you could pick another 20 or 30 Twilight Zone episodes and do the same with them, because there's a lot of them in the Twilight Zone. There's a heck of a lot of episodes that do the same kind of thing in the Twilight Zone. Yeah. But you're absolutely right, it does.
But, the first, second and third of these... first, third and fifth of these episodes we picked, Yeah.
I mean, I do want to just quickly read out another couple of quotes.
Yeah, you wrote some good ones down.
So the wife says, "Is this some kind of madness?" And there's another neighbour who says, I think he's the main one actually. His name escapes me, the actor. Stop telling me who's safe and who's a menace.
Yeah.
I mean, that's now. You're all desperate to point a finger at somebody else. I'm paraphrasing neighbour. All that will happen is we'll eat each other alive.
And they do.
And they do.
They do.
Yeah. And then you have the alien overseers at the end. I mean, you briefly said what I said. Understand the procedure now. Throw them into darkness for a few hours. Sit back and watch the pattern. They pick the most dangerous enemy they can find, and it's themselves. All we need to do now is sit back and watch. We'll go from one to another and let them destroy themselves, one to another, one to another. And that's happened. That's happened. That's happened in a lot of places in the world.
Yeah.
You know, they set the scenario up. But I also want the closing narration. In my book, actually, it says, and this was in 2017. I did actually say the closing narration is as prescient today as it was then. It's 10 times more prescient now.
I think it always is going to be.
It's always going to be. Yeah. While the world is governed and steered and controlled by certain elite factions and types, we will always have this happen to varying degrees. It'll wane a little bit, disappear a bit and then it comes back. And I think the danger now is because it's so extreme now. It's been a long, long time since it's been as extreme as it is now at the moment in terms of people's rights and freedoms being affected. But anyway, yeah, so the narration is, the tools of conquest do not necessarily come with bombs and explosions and fallout. There are weapons that are simply thoughts, attitudes and prejudices to be found only in the minds of men. For the record, prejudices can kill and suspicion can destroy, and a thoughtless, frightened search for a scapegoat as a fallout of its own for the children and the children yet born, and the pity of it is that these things cannot be confined to the Twilight Zone. Okay then, so we're going to rate them because you have rated them.
I am actually, first video ever, I'm actually prepared.
You're ahead of the game on this one. Yeah, I'm not. I'm just going to, on the fly. So we go to Serve Man.
Okay, so just before it, all of these except one, I would probably give a 10 out of 10. But I kind of wanted to sort of show which ones were maybe...
Of the real...
Just sort of... These ratings are basically my entertainment. Mm-hmm. Like, how much I enjoyed them, really.
Yeah.
But anyway, to Serve Man I gave 9.5.
Okay. I'd say... The problem with To Serve Man is it suffers from... when we talked about Red Dwarf, when you watch it again and again and again and again, it kind of loses its impact. Now, I've seen all of these many, many times, but the one that least impacted on me was the end. Even the Midnight Sun ending had a more impact on me than the end of To Serve Man. I just felt the ending was much more...
I suppose if you know the twist, it's...
Yeah, I'm going to give To Serve Man an 8.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, Nightmare at 20,000 Feet.
I can't give this any lower than a 10. Shatner is incredible in this.
Yeah, it's a 10 for me.
Yeah.
It's a 10 for me. Yeah. The Obsolete Man.
11. 10. 15.
15. No, it's a 10. Yeah, it's absolute gold.
It's completely impenetrable. There's nothing bad here.
It's a fantastic episode, yeah. Midnight Sun.
This was my least favourite of them all, but I gave this one an 8.
Yeah, I'm going to go for an 8 as well. It's a level with To Serve Man. It's got... There's more... the message is stronger in Serve Man, but the story is more taut and twist, I think, is a bit more... So, it kind of what one loses, the other one makes up for. So they kind of balance it. So, right, yeah. Monster Jam Maple Street.
Now, the first time I watched this, I jotted 9 down. But it was quite late. And then... You hadn't watched this one, so we watched that. You hadn't watched it recently, so I watched that again with you just before we recorded this, and I upped it to a 10.
Yeah, it's definitely a 10 for me.
Yeah, and I don't know why I wrote anything lower than this.
Sometimes you do. You just know that something is quality. It's like I say, The Obsolete Man is my favourite Twilight Zone episode of all of them. But people would then say, "Oh, that should make it more than the." But no, they're all different for their own reasons. They're all of that 10 caliber. Yeah. Of those ones that you rate 10. Yeah. So I don't think really there's anything more to say. We've really covered the glut of this. And I've really enjoyed watching them. I've really enjoyed talking about it. And I'm sure there's going to be people out there who are not going to be happy with what we've talked about or the way we've talked about it, and they're going to be like, la 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 la. I live under a rock on Mars, and the world's fine, and and that would make a good Twilight Zone episode. I live under a rock on Mars, going la 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 la. But these things do need saying. People, you have to remind people sometimes, give them a little... God knows there's enough nudging going on in the world, psychological warfare, where they're nudging people to believe...
More like rugby tackling.
Well, yeah. So we'll do a little nudge back and nudge people into watching these and thinking outside the box a bit more, because I think, we definitely need some critical thinking going on in the world at the moment, and these are powerful examples. And it's a good way to be entertained for a couple of hours as well, as well as making you think, which can never be a bad thing. 2 for the price of 1. Yeah. So with that, I will say thank you very much for watching this video. Thanks for joining me, Dan. It's been great. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you can. I would truly appreciate it. And Dan and I will see you again very soon. Take care.
Goodbye.
Bye bye.